This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
A good Thursday to you. It is November 17th already. Jesperson here with Hooks. Johnny Hooks. That could be your
Captain Hook.
that could be your new DJ name.
Yeah.
Johnny Hooks. Welcome. How you doing on this Thursday, pal? You've been doing a little troubleshooting. Things going behind the scenes. You got a sexy new camera.
We got a new camera here.
Mission Control. We're pretty excited about.
When there's a new camera, there's always audio issues. So.
Well, you've been doing a great job. You know what I love is that you've been having, and we want to give a shout out to the Real Talkers that join us live when we stream this on the Mixlr audio app, and of course on YouTube as well every morning, because you've been able to troubleshoot with their assistants. I saw you chatting with them yesterday in the live chat, asking people how everything's going.
Does it look good? Does it sound good? Tell me more.
You let us know. You can send us an email anytime. We got some serious business to cover today, and I'm looking forward to a conversation in just about 5 minutes with Nazanin Moghadami. He's going to give us we'll check in from Vancouver, a clinical counselor, a community organizer that has been committing basically every waking moment that she has outside of her day job, so to speak, organizing in support of the revolution in Iran. It's a story that we've obviously been following. We know that you have too. It's a story that the world has been watching, these remarkable demonstrations in public representing great courage as the people of Iran, in particular women in Iran, are demanding democracy and change to that regime. Nazanin will give us a sense as an immigrant to Canada and as a community organizer on the West Coast, exactly why this is so important to her and an idea of the good work that they've been doing. Plus, journalist Dani Paradis will join us in approximately 25 minutes' time. She's going to take us into her story that she released exclusively yesterday on APTN News. You can check it out at aptnnews.ca. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says that she has Cherokee roots, but the records don't back that up. That's Dani's reporting. Yeah, so we'll get into this. I'm curious to know how that was on her radar and what she found. Yeah, she was looking for receipts. Turns out she didn't find them. So Dani is going to check in with us on that within this first half hour of the show. And, of course, we're going to get to what you have to say on all this as well. You can hit us up on our hashtag RealTalkRJ anytime. And, of course, as mentioned, you can leave a comment in the live chat, too. Did you see that the former star, or the star, whatever you want to call it, of Full House, Candace Cameron Bure, is trending this morning?
No.
Yeah, so it turns out, she had been doing most of her work, most of her acting work had been on the Hallmark Channel. Now she was sort of, I guess, known as the Queen of Christmas. People were calling her because of her, her prominence in the Hallmark Christmas movies. Well, she says that she is no longer going to be doing Hallmark Christmas movies. Why? She says because they're featuring LGBTQ2S+ storylines. They're featuring gay and lesbian storylines, and Candace Cameron Bure says it doesn't line up with her conviction, and so she's not going to be doing work on the Hallmark Channel anymore. You'd never believe it, Johnny, but actually some people are taking issue with that.
I would think so.
Yeah, it turns out that not everybody's thrilled about Candace Cameron Bure's position on this, and so she's responding to this. She's released a statement, and I'm not sure. It's pretty interesting when you read someone's statement, or you hear a statement in a scenario like this, and the statement doesn't just simply say, I stand in solidarity and love and support of my LGBTQ brothers and sisters, and it dances all around it, right? So you listen to this, and I'm not going to read the whole statement, but basically, all of you who know me know beyond question I have great love and affection for all people. It breaks my heart. Anybody thinks I would ever intentionally want to offend or hurt anybody, it saddens me. The media is often seeking to divide us. It's the media's fault, even around a subject as comforting and merry as Christmas movies. She says, but given the toxic climate in our culture, I shouldn't be surprised. I agree with her there. She says, Christmas, we need it now more than ever. She says, I'm a devoted Christian, which means I believe every human being bears the image of God. Because of that, I am called to love all people, and I do. Still can't say the words, right? If you know me, you know I'm a person who loves fiercely and indiscriminately. My heart yearns to burn bridges and bring people one step closer to God, to be a reflection of God's huge love for all of us. She goes on to criticize the media for using this opportunity to fan flames of conflict and hate. She says to the media, though, I love you anyway.
They're
So she
trying
still
to
loves the
cancel
media.
me.
They're trying to cancel Candace Cameron Bure. So that's one of the stories I was paying attention to today. When I signed into Twitter, it's one of the first things I do in the morning. As long as it is still here, I will still do that to kick off my mornings. And I was surprised. I was wondering, why is Candace Cameron Bure trending? And then you get that feeling where you go, oh, no, because typically it's either somebody has done something or somebody's passed away. Those are kind of the two reasons why somebody trends. Unless it's Rex Murphy, and then he trends every time he releases a column. Rex Murphy doesn't have to be on Twitter to trend on Twitter. He seems to have mastered that. But that's the Candace Cameron Bure story. Are you a Hallmark Christmas movie kind of a guy?
I'm not, but my wife definitely is. She peruses all of them. She kind of plays them in the background while she's baking or doing whatever for Christmas.
Yeah.
Like, they're not worth like giving your 100% attention, but she definitely runs through them all on Crave and on all our Pick TV and everything, no matter how bad they are.
Yeah, or how good they are.
Well,
people are hardcore about being fans of these things.
We actually watched the new Lindsay Lohan one, which is out on Netflix. Falling for Christmas. It's getting good reviews, and you know what? It wasn't that bad. We actually sat down and made some popcorn and ate some dinner, and it was not that bad. I enjoyed
happy to see Lindsay Lohan working. You know, she's a talented actor.
Yeah.
And she had kind of like a bumpy road for a number of years.
Well, she had a little falling out there. She had some party days, and then she had some days where she wasn't in the movies. But actually, she was pretty good acting in this movie, too.
Yeah.
I was surprised, Oh,
there you go, falling into Christmas. You know what we should do is get your, here on Real Talk, on the weeks leading up to the holidays, we could get like your weekly holiday movie review.
Well, there you go. My review for this week, see Falling for Christmas, Lindsay Lohan's comeback special.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. We'll get to Nazanin in just a second. If you wouldn't mind loading up as well that weather report that I sent you in Slack. You saw this one. The first video I sent you this morning, you'll know what it is. You know what I'm talking about. We'll get to that in just a second. Before we do, if you're waiting right now for the Black Friday sales to pick up a gift for that person in your life, maybe a creator, someone who has that special talent of bringing images to life, it's a perfect day to check out McBainCamera.com. Why? Because their Black Friday sales are on right now. It means you can get discounts on unique accessories like the Joby Grip Tight Gorilla Pod MagSafe smartphone clamp for the iPhone 12 or more recent iPhones. This is a really innovative mount that lets you easily connect your smartphone to the included Gorilla Pod stand. These Gorilla Pods, if you've used these, you know they are the best in the biz. It allows you to mount your phone virtually anywhere. It's perfect for content creators. Shoot that video for your Insta story. Get that perfect selfie. It's only $89.99. You can order it today online at McBainCamera.com. Or, of course, you can go visit them in one of their 6 locations. Go check out their full list of Black Friday deals. McBain, create to inspire. At Friesen Brothers, it's a big week for them. It's a big day today. Why? Because Charlie, their sourdough starter, John, he turns 7 today. Yeah, that's right. Thanks to their sourdough starter, Charlie. Happy birthday to Charlie. Their craft bakers obviously create a huge variety of bakery products, from bread and buns to all kinds of sweet treats. You can learn more about Charlie, the sourdough starter. I mean, if you're passionate about sourdough, you know I don't have to explain this to you. Check out Friesen.com/Charlie. And at every single Friesen Brothers, 16 of them across Alberta right now, you can enter to win a birthday celebration bread gift basket giveaway. In store, you can enter a winner for every Friesen Brothers location. Alberta grown and Alberta owned. Hey, I want to give a big shout out to our friends at Urban Timber. You know by now, they are the team of, what do I call them, John? Magicians? The ones that design these wizards that put this table together. It is the pride of our new Real Talk studio. They took our vision and they elevated it in a way that we couldn't even imagine. That's why we're so proud to partner with them. You can right now browse their brand new showroom online, or of course visit them in person. Their West Edmonton location, just stunning. You can check out urbantimber.ca to see what they do. They're about so much more than just tables, of course. Wall panels, flooring, door inserts. I mean, this is the new era of design. And of course, Urban Timber presenting our Real Talk Roundtable. Tomorrow's leading up to International Men's Day. We're going to be talking to men and women who are working in the space of men's mental health, and we can officially announce that after he receives the Order of Canada today, legendary actor Tom Jackson will be joining our Real Talk Roundtable tomorrow, presented by Urban Timber. Very cool stuff. Well, you likely know, I mean, if you watch the news, if you pay attention to the world around you, and of course, if you're tuned into Real Talk, that describes you, doesn't it? You're aware of what's been going on in Iran since September, in particular, following the killing of a woman, Mahsa Amini, in police custody. Well, this describing it as a revolution might be an understatement. And in just a moment, we're going to speak to a Vancouver woman who is working as part of a collective to organize support for individuals over in Iran and those fleeing that country. To paint a picture of the perspective of the reach of the impact of what's happening in Iran, check out this weather report. It's a brief one from neighboring Azerbaijan.
Havanın değişken bulutlu geçmesine baxmayaraq, inanırıq ki, Təbrizdə hava daim günəşli olacaq. Özünüzə yaxşı baxın, dəyərli Güney Azərbaycanlıları.
There she is as she removes her headscarf, her hijab, delivering that weather report. The significance of that, obviously massive. Our leadoff guest this morning, Nazanin Moghadami, is a clinical counselor, an activist, a community organizer living on the unceded traditional ancestral lands of MST. She's a Kurdish Iranian feminist who came to Canada in 2005. She's currently working with full-time supporting LGBTQI+ refugee and refugee claimants outside of her professional work, all of her time spent organizing in support of the revolution in Iran. We're very grateful that, Nazanin, you've made time to speak with us this morning. Welcome to Real Talk, and thanks for being here.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear, and we can see you well. Can you tell us, I mean, what goes through your mind? What do you think? What emotion does it invoke when you see a weather report like that one there broadcast out of Azerbaijan?
When I see images of like that shows so much international solidarity, pride. I'm so proud of Middle Eastern women. And I'm so inspired, and it's so good. Our countries have tried so hard to separate us and spread anonymity between us, pit us against each other. And when I see like Azerbaijan, I actually haven't seen that video, so I'm going to Google it and share it with my friends. Palestinians, Syrians, Turkish, Afghan. When I see that solidarity, it just makes my heart really happy during such a difficult and dark time.
This is, these ongoing protests in Iran represent certainly the largest, and it's being described as the most unified public challenge to the government in years. And in particular, these demonstrations have been led by women and by schoolgirls. Can you talk to us about why that is so significant? It's not the first feminist uprising we've had in Iran. We've had it, and then they were just killed. Like especially right after the revolution, right before the war, women's voices have been violently silenced when the compulsory hijab came in place. There were so many resistance that we're just learning about now. Like the archives are just resurfacing now. That my generation is learning about them now. But the significance of it is that unlike many other movements before, no one is saying, oh, let's get to democracy and then we will get to women's rights. This time it's like there's a bit of a collective unconscious that without freeing the bodies of women, and it's really a body like autonomy revolution, without freeing and liberating the bodies of people and the bodies of women, there is no freedom, there is no democracy, there is no talk, there is no freedom of speech or expression. So just before, as you were having your last guest, I was also scrolling through Twitter, as one does early in the morning, and I was seeing queer people showing up explicitly in the protest and with their flags, and that's kind of the first time that we're seeing queer people like showing up in this protest explicitly inside Iran because of a lot of dangers that they face, and it just makes my heart really happy that it's women and now it's queer people who are showing up and putting themselves in danger. Like every person who shows any gesture like that woman removing her headscarf, or like a person like holding a trans flag on the streets, they're really risking their lives. Yet they are making such a powerful statement. I think, and my degree of understanding here is limited. I'm so grateful that you're here to help us understand this. But even somebody like me, who's rather insulated from this movement and who's learning to scale up their awareness of it, can recognize the significance of removing and burning hijabs. I mean, the symbolism there is enormous.
And exactly. And just, I want to make it clear, this is also one of the fights that we've been fighting outside of Iran, is that this is not about Islam. This is really not about
I think maybe we're getting a bit of an interruption here on the connection, John. Should we get Nazanin? We're just getting a bit of an interruption in your Wi-Fi connection, so we're going to work to resolve that. If we can just drop the audio there, John, for a sec, and then we'll get that figured out in just a quick second. This is Nazanin Moghadami that's joining us from Vancouver. That's a really interesting point, and as we work to get her back, we're going to circle back on that. I want to hear that. This is not about Islam, she says. This is about so much more, and that's, of course, an important point that we want to focus on as we do a real quick troubleshoot here. We'll just take a quick second to remind you that these conversations happen because of sponsors like our friends at Athabasca University. Right now at athabascau.ca, if you're looking for a new opportunity, if you've resolved that in 2023, as that calendar clicks over to a new year, this is going to be a new you, the start of a new you. There's no better time to take that degree or master's program than there is right now. You can go to athabascau.ca for more information. Why is it probably a great option for you? Well, number one, you can choose from 35 different online master's or doctorate programs, not to mention countless solar energy solutions to power your life. Kubi's a full-service contractor for residential and commercial solar power systems. Their Tesla-certified installers are working in BC and Alberta, apprentices, and of course, journeymen up there on the roof, making sure the job is done right the first time. They're experts in handling all of the paperwork, too. That Canada Greener Homes grant, still up for grabs, a $40,000 interest-free loan from Ottawa. It's allowing a lot of people to go green a lot sooner than they thought they might be able to do. You can get your free quote today at kubienergy.ca. Let's check back in with Nazanin Moghadami. We're working to get a strong connection here. Obviously, what you're telling us is extremely important. We were cutting out right around the time you were making the point, Nazanin. You said this is about more than Islam. Or you said this is not about Islam. Can you take us into that thought?
Yeah, so like the burning of hijab and the symbolism is about freedom and agency and autonomy over our bodies and our freedom of expression, how we express ourselves. This is not about Islam, so I don't want anyone to make the mistake that we're like, this is an Islamophobic movement. It is not, especially in Iran. Like, I'm talking with my mom and she's saying that no one cares what anyone is wearing right now, which is exactly what we want. It doesn't matter if people are wearing the traditional chador or they're not. And what we're also seeing is a lot of like people with disabilities and people with sensitivities and trans people are saying that hijab is actually quite harmful to us when we have the compulsory hijab, like a trans man wearing a hijab because they don't pass and they have to cover their hair. That's quite problematic. Or someone with physical sensitivities and stimulation sensitivities, they have to wear the hijab. That's quite problematic and oppressive. It really limits how they can be outside of home. So this is about bodies. This is about liberating bodies. This is the symbolism, the movement. This is all about women's right and the right of everyone over their choices, their bodies, and their minds.
It's I'm calling up your group's Instagram account right now, and people can check it out at it's women.life.freedom, and this is women with an X, and this is obviously this chant, this mantra can be heard around the world. I mean, it's being chanted collectively across Iran. Can you talk to us about the significance of that specific phrase?
Yeah, so when we chant Zan Zendegi Azadi, we also need to remember where it came from. It came from it's a very feminist slogan. It's a very feminist motto at its core. It's from the feminist Kurdish movement by the feminist women's resistance. that they came together and they were like, we don't want to have a voice. We want to be the leaders. And that's how they did it. And that's what also we don't want. We don't want to have a voice in the movement. We don't want to be part of the movement. We are the movement. And this is where it came from. This is the roots. And Gina, or Mahsa, this is her Farsi name. Gina was a Kurdish woman in the Iranian Kurdish part of Iran. And the chant came out of the prison system and found its way on the streets in the Farsi format. And then when we say women, life, freedom, zan zendegi azadi, this is what we're fighting for. That without freedom of women, there's no freedom of people, there's no freedom of societies, and there's no freedom of lands. In Canada, we understand the significance of sovereignty over lands. Some people do. Sovereignty over lands of people who have been here for centuries. And in Iran, that's also what we're fighting for, to have sovereignty over our bodies, our minds, our societies, and our lands. And this is the significance of it. This is a feminist slogan to its core, and that's what people are fighting for.
Do you think that the average Canadian is aware or understands the significance of what's going on in Iran right now?
I hope so. I live in Vancouver, so it's I live in an urban setting, and anyone that I have spoken to, maybe they don't have the political analytical understanding, which might be a little bit too much to expect, but like everyone has heard this, everyone is knowing what's going on, and everyone knows the uprising in Iran is about women's rights, and it's about women's movement. And as a feminist who's living here and came to kind of like my understanding of feminism here, what is very, it makes me really proud is men are not shying away from joining proudly in the movement and identifying, not in Western terms as a feminist, but yesterday I was watching a march in one of the streets of Iran, and there was this like man who was on top of his lungs, he was screaming. There's a very famous chant that says, the creep is you, words that have been used against women who remove their hijab. So they were like, the creep is you, the liberated woman is me. And the guy was just shouting on top of his lungs that the liberated woman is me. I was like, that's fantastic. That's great. We had another dad who was burying his son who was killed in one of the protests 2 years ago. And he was saying every time we wanted to praise someone traditionally, we would say, oh, you're acting like a man. Like the same way in English, they say like, oh, man up, as just a figure of expression. And he was saying that we shouldn't say that. We should say, if you really want to live with dignity, if you really want to resist, you should act like a woman. So this is the kind of thing that we are really seeing from men also, that it's breaking some gender barriers, not everywhere, but it's really pushing women's rights, I think, 20 years forward in Iran, 25 years forward in Iran from where it was.
I appreciate. I want to dig a little bit further. I want to circle back on something you said there. Something along the lines of, you said maybe not falling under, or maybe not under the Western understanding of feminism. How might it differ? Can we pursue that? Can we dig into that for a second? What you mean by that?
Yeah. My understanding of feminism here has been very individualistic. It's about my rights, and it's about how I have something. And it's for the zeitgeist, for what it has had over the years, women has always been the forefront of feminism. So like we see in Women's March, we see that in the right to have abortion, or choice over our bodies, or slut walk prior, when that Toronto judge talks about like inappropriateness of short skirts in that. We see women mostly leading and showing up, and this is the protest that we see everyone showing up. There's no ownership of this movement, but there's a very collective, very clear understanding that the women are leading the movement. No one's contesting that. No one, I have not seen a man saying, like outside or inside Iran, that says, I'm the leader, or I'm making people come to the streets. Everyone's agreeing. Everyone has a lot of respect for the women, and they're really showing up. And what I'm also seeing is that it's not about who's a woman and who's not a woman, and who has certain body types. Or this is not about that. This is about, when we shout to women, we really shout freedom for all bodies and all people, including child brides, including undocumented immigrants in Iran, including prisoners, including Afghan women and children, including everyone. So when we're shouting women, this is such an all-inclusive chant, and everyone is feeling the ownership of it. And that may be one of the things that is different, is that you don't see as much of an ownership unless people are affected directly. So allyship has been very hard to get here over the years. And that's my experience. I'm not making a general statement about feminism in the West. And it's a very collective kind of an experience. It's over sovereignty. We're not fighting for the right to have custody of our children, or the right to have birth certificate if we marry a foreigner, and which is actually we don't as women. This is not about fighting for rights. We're fighting for the upheaval and the throwing the government and creating a completely new system. And actually, like, if you study also Kurdish feminism, Jenjian Azadi, Women, Life, Freedom, is a governance structure as well. So this is what we're fighting for. We're not fighting for reform. Reform is 20 years ago. We're fighting for completely redesigning a system that has been oppressing everyone, especially women. And we're recognizing that the women and queer bodies have been at the end of the line. And if we want to make sure that everyone gets their turn, we really need to attend to those demands.
I want to pull back the curtain for a second and let you know that this is the type of interview where I'm watching the clock. I'm realizing that you and I could talk for 5 hours right now. I'm fascinated by it. We haven't even talked about what you do professionally, which I think is important to talk about. And it's not lost on me. If people are just tuning in right now, we're talking to Nazanin Moghadami out of Vancouver, a community organizer, an Iranian feminist. The date today, we're speaking on November 17th. The 15th, 16th, and 17th of November are very significant dates, looking back to 2019. Would you enlighten our audience if they're not yet aware?
Yeah, so in 2019, there was a significant price hike for gas, for fuel. And people took it to the streets. The economy has been really struggling, both because of corruption, because of international sanctions on Iran that has been really isolating the country economically. And sanctions have been always controversial when it comes from Iran, because on the one hand, you want to have it's a punitive method. And at the same time, it's the people who are paying the price. And then you mix it up with corruption of the government, and you get a very bad mixture for people. So people were already struggling, and the economy have been going downhill. And that hike, that really significant hike, sparked widespread protests, something similar to what we have been seeing. And in the span of 3 days, there was massacres in the streets. There were massacres unlike anything we had seen maybe in 30 years. About 3,000 people were killed, and that's the kind of the official number. So we know it's much more. People disappeared, people were jailed, people were tortured, people were injured, people lost their abilities and their bodies and their homes. And we called it Aban Khuni, Bloody November, because it was so bad. So during these 3 days, since the 15th, actually, the uprising has taken to a new level, and they have been much more they're attacking now. The protests are attacking and they have been, but it's much more significant. And the joys you're also seeing, the dancing in the streets, the people kissing, actually, and kissing is also illegal in Iran. You cannot show public affection. So you see them hand in hand. You see the resistance and the fighting, and you also see the joys and the dancing. And it's been much more, the government have been much more violence. Also, just last night before I went to bed, I read about a 10-year-old who was walking home in Khuzestan, and he was shot. And he was just shot in the head, holding his dad's hands. Was just walking, going home from school. There's speculation that there are foreign forces right now from neighboring countries. Iran has lots of alliance with other right-wing governments. We're seeing beating of people in metro, so on metro stations, in metro wagons. So they go into the wagons when people cannot leave, and they just pepper spray and beat people. So we're seeing much more violence, much more just violations. And in the sexual assault field that I also worked for many years, what we always see is that whenever there's violence, there's resistance. So we're seeing that resistance coming up and bubbling up, and everyone saying, we're not backing down. We're going to see this through, whatever that through is. And this is one of the other differences, that by now it's been 2 months and everyone's kind of like certain that we're going to see this through. And there is going to be an end somehow. There is going to be an end one way or another.
What do you think it's can I ask you what you think that's going to look like? I mean, this is your opinion, but it's certainly an informed opinion. Mm-hmm. Where do you see this? Like, can I show you this for context as well? Most people, Nazanin, will hear this on the podcast, but for people looking on YouTube, if you're listening to this on the podcast, just Google on your phone Iran kiss, and the first thing that will come up is this remarkable image of two people kissing in the street. It's an image that's going viral yesterday into today. I wanted to ask you about the significance of this. What emotion or what does this invoke within you?
I just love my people. I love their sense of humor. I love that they can have these moments in such a traumatic time. And honestly, like, I'm going to share something really personal about this. These movements have restored the dignity and the place of Middle Eastern and Iranian women for me at least, in Canadian society, to a degree that I didn't see it was possible. And what I mean is, I've been living here 17 years, and the racism that we get, the sexism that I receive from general Canadian society has been significant. So from those like sympathetic looks of like, oh, you're so lucky to be here, as if I'm some oppressed person from some oppressed country, from some oppressed family, with no recognition of nuances and the complexities of why someone like me would be living here, or even why someone become refugees. And that has changed. So when I speak with people who might not have those kind of like nuanced feminist awarenesses, when I say I'm Iranian, there's an awe, there is a recognition, and there's an appreciation. There's wow, your women are so strong, and this is what I'm getting. And this has been such a reclaim of power and image of Middle Eastern women as people who need saving. And this is such a message that we don't need saving. We don't need any foreign country come, and I'm going to be a bit punchy. We don't need anyone come and bomb our countries in the name of democracy. And what we have seen in Iraq and Afghanistan, and now we know it was never about democracy. Like it was always about money and resource extraction. But we see that kind of foreign involvement, it's so damaging, and our people are very much capable of doing what we need to do. And another thing that we've been chanting and saying to international community is that you don't need to come and save us. Stop saving our murderers. Stop saving people who do this. Stop selling arms. It's been 2 months, and there has been so many tear gases. Like like people are kind of asking, where is this ammunition coming from? Where are these forces coming from? Who gives them permission? So what we're really saying is, don't punish us for protesting and then coming and save us, quote unquote. But stop saving, stop shaking hands, stop making backroom deals with the Iranian government. This is what is really going to hurt us. And that's a bit of a fear from European unions to Canada to the US, that there is going to be some backhanded deals that's going to be really undermining. We're very much capable of saving ourselves and doing what is right. And our women are very much capable of protesting and asking for what we need. but we need support, and support doesn't mean saving. We don't need a savior, and that's where it gets tricky, because it's very difficult to live with uncertainty on what support means. But right now, what we really need from the Canadian society, and anyone who is Iranian or non-Iranian living in diaspora, or anyone who's non-Iranian living in the West, is be our voice. Share the news. Don't share disappointing news, the traumatic news, but share our voices. Share the name of the prisoners. And the number one protective factor for prisoners of Iran in Iran jails and prisons is when their name go viral. And that really protects them from being executed or tortured worse than they are. So learning and educating and sharing those kind of news actually make a difference. Even if you have a small private account, small private Facebook, small private Instagram with 10 people in it, that makes a huge difference. Don't think that your voice doesn't matter. These are the things that we ask. These are the demands that from the country it's coming. It's not about saving. It's not about military attacks. This is not about, I have not seen or heard anyone saying, oh, we need the US to come and save us or anything like that. And I'm going to read a quote for you. So I'm going to shift my camera a little bit. I want to read a quote about the answer of what's going to happen. And I have a very good answer for you. Give me just 1 second. Okay, I'm just going to shift my camera a little bit. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given, because you would not be able to live them. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live long some distance, say, into the answer. And this is a quote by Rainer Maria Rilke, a German philosopher. And I really love this quote because there's lots of questions about, so what's next? What's going to happen? And the questions coming from Iran and also outside of Iran of like, well, who's going to be the leader? What is the interim government looks like? Or is there going to be a referendum? Or like, what is next? Which is a very valid question for when the time comes. And this quote really, really grounds me of, do not now seek the answer which cannot be given. And learn to love them and learn to live them. And this is a daily practice of really grounding on what needs to be happening now. And when the time comes, I really trust the people inside of Iran to make that demand and make those decisions. There have been many people who claim leadership and have done some work that has been amazing, and it hasn't had a catch. So we're going to wait and see. This is where we also need to lean into the uncertainty. And when the time comes for planning, I am very certain that the people in Iran will start voicing that planning committee or whatever that it's going to be. We don't even know what it's going to look like. But this is where we're going to be really doing that personal work that is also important as a counselor. I can use that language of doing that personal work of like really inviting everyone who's asking, so what's next? How are we going to go forward? To really lean into, we don't know. And that's very much okay. And that's very much a powerful thing. It's not coming from a weakness point. We don't know, and it's not the time. Does that make sense?
John can see you kept it real. You got personal 5 minutes ago. Let me get personal. This is pretty rare. I'm emotionally moved by talking to you, Nazanin. I want to say this to your face. So I want to see you on camera. I underestimated. I mean, I knew this was going to be a powerful conversation. And the person who put you on our radar is somebody very close to me that has a great deal of respect for you. And, I'm just very impacted by your perspective and the level of what you're talking about and the personal challenge that you're issuing to us. I don't know. I'm feeling it, and so that's a good thing. And
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I am just so grateful for you sharing your perspective and your personal informed perspective, which oftentimes we don't always get. We live in an age where there are so many opinions. And dialogue that oftentimes is unproductive. And I think that regardless of where people stand on any given issue, you've given us so many important things to consider, such wonderful and important insight into what's happening here, affecting and impacting millions of people around the world. And I'm so grateful for that. I want to also respect your time. You are an in-demand counselor, and I'm sure that you have a schedule. There's probably somebody waiting to talk to you right now because we've already gone 15 minutes over the amount of time that we asked you. But I didn't want to interrupt a single thing you were saying. Hey, make me one promise, will you? Because I want to talk to you. But you do work with LGBTQ 2S+ immigrants and people new to Canada, and I want to talk about that refugee experience, but not today because you've got to go, and we do have another guest as well. So promise me you'll come back to the show.
I would love to, Ryan.
Okay. I feel like I just made a new friend. Hey,
me.
thank you. I really appreciate it. That's Nazanin Moghadami. That, I think, John, is like, I feel like that's one of the most powerful interviews we've ever had on the show, to be quite honest with you.
Pretty moving.
Yeah, I didn't expect this to land the way it is, and I'm just going to roll with it because I think that that's absolutely beautiful. And if you're enjoying this, if this moved you, this conversation, like it's clearly moved me, it would mean a lot to us if you'd hit like on our YouTube page, if you would share this interview with people that you know would benefit hearing from it. Of course, we want to make sure that as many people catch these conversations as possible. And of course, you can tag us in anything that you post online using our hashtag RealTalkRJ. That is powered by our friends at Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. And they want to point out something today that you're probably already well aware of. As we enter into the winter months, we're going to be paying a little bit more for power. We're going to be paying a little bit more for natural gas. Running space heaters, if you're doing so, do it safely, by the way. You know, running that furnace that maybe kick-started a month ago, hadn't run for the last 6 months. We've been getting used to lower bills. We're trying to keep our costs down as much as possible, which is why it makes sense to compare rates today on internet, electricity, and natural gas at parkpower.ca. I'm going to wager a guess that regardless of who you're doing business with right now, you're going to pay less with Park Power, especially when you use the promo code 2022-RealTalk. You save $70 off your first bill. $70 at parkpower.ca. LandscapeEdmonton.ca is where you'll find our friends at Eden Landscaping, bringing outdoor spaces to life for more than 2 decades, family-owned and operating. Mike and his team spend their winter months with the design process in front of them, drawing up beautiful blueprints to transform front and backyards. Did you buy one of those homes that came with kind of the cookie-cutter front yard, just nothing but sod and that one tree that 30 years from now is going to look great? Why not trust Eden Landscaping to do something about it? Come spring, you'll be the talk of the town because you partnered with Eden Landscaping. And at Local Environmental Services, they understand what it means to keep it local. It means that communities get better service, better prices, more support for local causes. It's what they're all about, and you can check out their video, Who is Local, at localenvironmental.ca. Learn more about their core values. And of course, learn more about their services across Alberta and Saskatchewan, serving commercial, industrial, agricultural partners. And of course, you're paying less with Local Environmental than you will elsewhere. They'll compete for your business. That can start today with a visit to localenvironmental.ca. Of course, they're presenting Trash Talk. Tomorrow, you can send your submission. Whatever you need to get off your chest, send it an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. This story raised more than a few eyebrows yesterday when it was reported exclusively by our next guest, APTN journalist Dani Paradis. You can read it at apnnews.ca. Reads the headline, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says she has Cherokee roots, but the records don't back that up. The journalist behind the story joining us now live, Dani Paradis, returning to Real Talk. It's nice to see you again. Thanks for making time for us.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. How did this story wind up on your radar in the first place? When did you start digging here?
When I, most recently, Danielle Smith fired a phone bank contractor, and she mentioned in some tweets, it was kind of a vague story, but she mentioned that she was firing him due to some racist prank phone calls that were released on media. I'm trying to avoid really getting into that because I haven't looked into that story. But what I mentioned was that she's talking about, she mentioned as somebody with Indigenous ancestry. And I hadn't heard that before. And then I was looking around and curious where that came from because it came out of nowhere to me. But what I saw online showed me that she actually had made that claim a couple times. So that got me really interested. I looked around if anybody had actually covered this before, and there's like an old Don Braid article from 2012 where he's bemoaning the fact that people are bringing race into a conversation, and he mentions that Danielle Smith had to bring up her Cherokee roots, and I couldn't believe nobody had actually looked at this, because as I note in my piece, the story about like a great grandmother who's Cherokee, that's like a joke in Indigenous communities. It's a really common thing, especially in the southern United States, for the Cherokee, for Americans to claim Indigenous ancestry. Now here, it's more often the Métis, which I am, so I get to be a part of the group that has a lot of people who claim to be them without fully understanding what we are. So I think that's what had me sensitized to the subject to begin with.
So you did a deep dive here, and again, people should check it out at aptnnews.ca. They can follow you on Twitter at Dani Paradis to find the link. Can you take us through exactly how you spoke to genealogists? You had reached out to former employers of the Premier. I mean, you worked on this for quite some time. Take us through the process.
Yeah, I spoke with, I started by going through everything I could find about what Danielle Smith had talked about regarding her Cherokee roots. And then I started to trace, because she actually has talked, as you can imagine, as somebody who's been in the limelight for a long time, she's talked about her family and her family history. So I started creating Ancestry is very useful for this. I started to create a family tree based on the information that I could find. And some of that led to, in the Globe and Mail, she's talking about a school teacher named Ethel Parkin. So I was looking in the records for a book. Quite frequently in Alberta, if you're talking about a rural community, somebody has a book about it. So I looked to see if I could find her there. Sure enough, I did. I was able to track that all the way to her family roots all the way to Nova Scotia. And then I got a little stuck, so I had to bring in some actually two genealogist friends. One was an American friend that I just casually asked, and then another is somebody who has worked on sort of these sorts of allegations of Indigenous identity before. And then from there, it took a cross-referencing. Once you have everything in Ancestry, there's a lot of census records that you can see. You can see what race was declared on the census records. And then it was a lot of back and forth with people who know a lot more about Cherokee genealogy specifically, because of course, being in Canada, we don't always have that context of understanding, what would prove membership as this group. So I really relied on the genealogists when it came to that aspect. But there's still things that you can see, like, of course, sometimes there's photos, sometimes there's the census records. Then you can check in other family members. I did attempt to reach out to Danielle Smith's mom. I did reach out to her several times as well for comment, because I still am curious about where this story came from. Is this something that they just all heard growing up and nobody questioned, or why is it so detailed? Especially as you can tell in the piece, she talks about Mary Crow, her great-great-grandmother, being forcibly removed from the Trail of Tears, but she was born 20 years after the Trail of Tears occurred. So there's a lot of questions that I still have about this.
You reached out to the Premier's office, you said. Did they provide any sort of response? I mean, even a canned one?
No.
Like no response at all?
No, I did not get a response. I did speak to her chief of staff on the phone, and he asked me just to send an email, which is pretty common.
Sure.
And I did not receive any response at all.
Huh. So ultimately, like at the end of the day, when you get set to publish this story, what did you take away from the exercise with regards to the significance of this and how you think it might impact political discourse in Alberta and maybe across the country?
I don't think as a reporter that you can always spend time thinking about what the political impact is of something, because it wasn't it's not a political article in my mind. It could have just as easily, it did happen to be claims of Indigenous identity, but it could have just as easily been a claim that you're looking into where somebody says they've attended a college. This just happens to be the racially charged conversation going on right now. And I don't know, I'm not sure that it's up to me to determine what the political impact is going to be. That's up to the people who live in Alberta if they care about what this story means. For me, I will say the part that that I paid the most attention to me, what makes this a story, because people are emailing me, of course, saying like, who cares? This happened 10 years ago. It didn't. She has repeatedly talked about being, she's used terms like Indigenous ancestry, mixed ancestry, Cherokee. And she used this during the 2012 Lake of Fire incidents where an MLA of hers had posted a blog post about how LGBTQ people would burn in a lake of fire. Very, very famous. But for those who are outside of Alberta, they might not be as familiar with that.
Sure, yeah.
And so to me, then she brought up that she was very sensitive to allegations of racism or bigotry because of her mixed ancestry. And if you're going to make those sort of statements, then you had better be accurate. It's quite a thing to use your heritage as a shield against criticism.
Let me be devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
Because I believe what my grandparents told me about their grandparents, right? Like I cite the story. Johnny, you and I were talking about our family's histories, and I talked about how the Jespersons came from a part of Denmark that had become a part of Germany and had come through South Dakota into Alberta. And Danny, I tell this story to people all the time, and the history of the Jesperson dairy farm and how they wound up in Stony Plain and what, we tell these stories, right?
Should I take some notes? Fact check this?
Yeah, maybe. But, you can say the Jesperson Family Cemetery in Stony Plain has it all there on the headstones, I guess, in a way. But to be serious, like, I've never fact-checked my family's history, really. I would love to. My brother did. My brother went over to Denmark and sort of walked those pathways and walked that territory. I wonder if it's possible, just for purposes of conversation here, to give the Premier the benefit of the doubt that maybe she just never did a deep dive on her own genealogy. Maybe she's been telling this story, and maybe reading your reporting, maybe she's having a moment herself. Do you think it might be possible?
Oh, completely. I mean, I don't say that it was a malicious commentary, that she was using the story knowing that it was false. I don't know that. I wasn't able to speak to her. And I would love to, because you're right. Like I've said, it's very common for people who are in Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Kansas to claim some kind of tie to Indigenous ancestry. And yet, nothing that you've told me is raising the same red flags, because of course we may very well be wrong about elements of our past, and I've had to dig into my own as well, being Métis and not always being 100% correct on things, and having to refine that over time. But isn't there also a responsibility, especially if you're going to claim Indigenous ancestry, and especially if you're going to claim it as a shield against why you can't be racist or bigoted towards another group of people? That puts this into a different category for me than, our family lore or hearing, like, if I heard some man at the bar say he was Cherokee, I'm not going to go dig into his family ancestry. We have to be careful how we use these tools as well. And there is a big conversation about the ethics of this, and how, who is worth exposing and who is, just genuinely mistaken and you leave it be. But we're talking about the most powerful person in Alberta here. We're talking about the Premier. We're not talking about, like,
the guy at the bar,
brother,
like you said.
The guy at the bar.
Yeah, like Lou says in our live chat right now, being conceived in a Jeep doesn't make you Cherokee. I appreciate that Lou's contributing to the conversation in that way. Hey, last time we spoke with you, you were covering the papal visit, the apology. You checked in with us. It was a very memorable live hit, as we call it, from Commonwealth Stadium ahead of the Pope leading prayers on the heels of his apology. In Masquachese. You've been doing amazing journalism over the past number of months, and we always love to support that good work. Is there anything else that you're working on right now that you'd like to tell us about while we have you here? What else is catching your attention, or what are you working on with regards to storytelling as we speak?
I mean, I publish several things a week, so I don't think I have a big one that I'm quite ready to talk about. Yeah, I'll give a slight teaser. I'm looking at something more long form about the Alberta justice system and how it's interacted with Indigenous women. But I don't have a timeline for when that's going to be out.
Put it on our radar, will you, when it's ready for release? And we'd love to have you back, Dani. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Ryan.
You bet. Dani Paradis, obviously a skilled journalist working right now at APTN News and doing great work. This is that like the long form stuff, the deep dive stuff.
Yeah.
It's the journalism that I'm excited is a strange word to use, but I'm really insist that people support that type of journalism. I feel strongly about it.
Genealogy is tricky.
It is.
Like my last name, Hicks, very white, Anglo-Saxon, rooted in Irish, Scottish, Celtic. But I researched it a little. I don't want to. I'm about to go to actually a family reunion this summer in Paducah, Kentucky, which is where most of my family is. So I'm like, okay, I'm the whitest guy you know, right? But I have looked back a little, and there's been Cherokee chiefs with the last name Hicks in Georgia and different places.
Really?
So like, it's very tricky. So I don't like that you gave her the benefit of the doubt, but maybe it's just she didn't do the work she was supposed to. She like maybe heard a story and just rolled with it her whole life and never actually, did what is it, the Ancestry.com or the whatever, what's that thing with
you
can do the DNA test. My wife did it, and just
did she? Did she discover anything that she had no idea about? Or?
Well, my wife's half Indian. Her father was Indian. He's sick, and then her mother is from Newfoundland. So a very strange mix. So she wanted to know how much of each she was, and she's found cousins and stuff from that. So it's great, but. I mean, it's pretty easy to go to something like that if you really, really want to know. So I think maybe Danielle just didn't do the work, Well,
and I'm not necessarily saying that I'm giving Premier the benefit of the doubt. I'm just saying I think that it's a valid question. Like, is it possible that she's just taking her family, as Dani described it, her family lore or her family traditions or the stories that have been passed down at their word and didn't do the deep dive? But Dani's absolutely correct, and I think it was teed up quite nicely for her to point out that it's more relevant when it's a political leader or a business leader for that matter. We've seen stories like this out of the United States at universities and in Canada for that matter. People claiming Indigenous ancestry, people claiming to be black when they're not.
But you should know 100%.
The magnitude of those are enormous when you're in positions of power. And like Dani just said, if it is invoked, if your ancestry or your heritage or your identity is invoked in response to controversy or scandal as a way to insulate you or distance you from that scandal or from that controversy,
you better be sure.
Then it's relevant, So I guess the point of me saying that right after I spoke to Dani there is to support her journalism. The long form stuff, it's great to see outlets like APTN and Real Talk, quite frankly, supporting that kind of stuff because we're in a day and age right now where journalists are expected to file daily, like story now, followed by video now, followed by social media now. And sometimes stories like this, and you'll see, I mean, if you go check it out online, if you check out Dani's reporting, I mean, she's put in a ton of work. We spoke to this person, we spoke to that person, we checked here, we checked there, we checked in with this, we ran that, so this is stuff that takes time. And it's great that she did it. And you can, of course, read it yourself at aptnnews.ca. That interview was presented by Apex Automation. They're putting out the call to professional engineers across Canada and beyond that are looking for something different, that are looking to feel inspired, that are looking to feel valued, that are looking to get their time back and give others back their time through engineering, fabrication, and automation. I know we're speaking directly to someone. A P-Eng that brings a lot to the table every day, but their company's not returning the favor. ApexAutomation.ca is where you can check out the careers link. You can learn what they do in engineering, fabrication, automation across a number of different sectors across the country. Opportunity abounds if you're an engineer at Apex Automation. We also wanted to give a big shout out to our friends at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. John, I go to dqcakes.com. I find the locations drop-down menu, and that's where I would enter Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, or Baseline Road. And why? Because it's never too early to start thinking about your holiday cake. Yeah, that's right. They've got Christmas cakes. You can do a Hanukkah cake. You can do a Kwanzaa cake, a Festivus cake, a birthday anniversary cake, or just because it's Thursday cake.
And don't forget about that blizzard of the month.
The new caramel macchiato.
People do
made
blizzards
with coffee crisp
all year round?
Oh, pal. There's like kind of like a blizzard per week type tradition with a few folks I know, and they visit the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. And we also wanted to remind you that if you're looking to upgrade your ride, maybe you went around that one corner and slippy, slidey, or you had that moment on the highway that had you white-knuckling it as you were trying to pass that big rig, snowstorms and ice, you've had enough of the car that's served you well, but it's time to make a move. Why not check out Sherwood and St. Albert Dodge? They're our partners, and we're very proud to partner with them, in part because they keep providing satisfied customers through the sales process and then the service and parts relationship. You can find them online, get approved right now. You can even connect with a member of their sales team from the comfort of your own home, or go see them at their beautiful dealerships, including the new one out in St. Albert. You can find them under the sponsors tab on our website, RyanJesperson.com. As mentioned, tomorrow's Real Talk Roundtable presented by Urban Timber is going to be a good one. We're talking about men's health ahead of International Men's Day. We've got a roster of 3 confirmed, so I don't want to recognize just one of them, but I'm going to, because we're really excited that Tom Jackson has agreed to join us. You know him from North of 60 and countless other projects across the country, on screen, on stage. He's a legend. It's why today he's winning. He's not winning. He's being bestowed with the Order of Canada. He'll talk to us about it tomorrow. We'll see you then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out RyanJesperson.com.